Hi, everyone. My name is Kensho Watanabe.
And hi, everyone from the Conductors Collective in conversation with the Dallas Opera. My name is Lina Gonzalez Granados, and today we have the privilege and honor to welcome our good friend, Roderick Cox, to the Conductors Collective in conversation. Hi, Roderick. How are you?
I'm good. How are you all? It's good to be here.
Good. Well, we're really happy to have you here and discuss what we have ready for you. I wanted to give our audience at the Dallas Opera a little bit of information about you because you have a list of really long list of good accomplishments and it's good to be celebrating them. So you were the winner of the 2018 Sir George Solti Conducting Award by the US Solti Foundation. You are at this moment in Berlin, right?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah, and you are American. You have had recent appearances with LA Field, the Cleveland Orchestra, Houston Grand Opera, the Philharmonia Orchestra, and you were the former associate conductor of the Minnesota Orchestra. So all of these like huge accomplishments for such a young conductor like us. We're like almost on the same age, so I love it.
Roderick, we met, I think, at that audition that you won in Minnesota. That's the first time I think we met. And actually, I don't think we've seen each other since, but we've always kept up, correspondence, and you've been such a wonderful colleague and sending messages of congratulations. And that's kind of how Lena and I started as well, because we don't get to meet, all together at once. So I really appreciated you reaching out in times for good news and things like that. And I think that's really important for us colleagues as we go forward. We wanted to center our talk today about your move as an artist, an American artist, to move to Europe. So can you tell us briefly about your jump, finishing out your tenure as associate conductor of the Minnesota Orchestra, and what was the thought process back then, and what motivated you to move to Berlin at that time?
Well, here's the thing. When you get into a position, I always felt that when one begins a position with an orchestra as a staff conductor, yes, the job that you must do is very important, but you also must immediately start developing your exit strategy, that you are there temporarily, and if you stay too long, you can overstay your welcome, and so you have to then start to immediately think about what you wish to achieve in that job. What do you wish to do, and what does life look like after that? And that is obviously different for everyone. Some people have families. Some people love the job so much that they want to stay longer and longer, 5 to 6 years. But I knew that at my age and where I was, I wanted to, I was very fortunate to have a great musical family in Minnesota, but in terms of establishing a career outside of the staff conducting post, it's important to establish relationships away from that orchestra so that people aren't viewing you as the associate conductor of the Philadelphia Orchestra or associate conductor of the Minnesota Orchestra all the time. And it's also hard, I felt it's hard to do that staying in the city and being close to all those people around. And so the decision to move to Berlin was, I have to say, a difficult one. And I'm still surprised that I made that decision. I had only visited the city once before moving there, and I didn't really like it. I thought it was edgy and grungy, and didn't really didn't understand the vibes there. But luckily, as musicians with great orchestras, we have players that come through all the time, guest artists, and we would have guest artists coming from Berlin. Elisa Wallerstein, Raphael Payare, and these musicians who I would speak to, and they would just say, "Oh, I love Berlin, I love Berlin." And so I was thinking that perhaps I did not have the right experience there. Perhaps I need to try it out again. But there was no time in my schedule when I was conducting at the Minnesota Orchestra that I had time to go do another visit. So I actually decided, I said, okay, I'm just gonna move there and check it out. And winning the Schulte Award helped give me a sense of freedom financially of saying, okay, I can go do this and not have to worry about if I'm going to be working right away because I have something to support myself. And I said, the only way I'm going to be serious about this move is if I buy a plane ticket. This is without an apartment, without knowing what neighborhood I should live in or where should I go. I said, the only way I'm going to focus my energy on doing this is by buying a plane ticket. And so once I bought the plane ticket in, I believe, June of maybe May or June of 2018, I then had to start looking for a place to stay and prepare myself for moving. And I still can't believe how I did this because the Minnesota Orchestra, we were going on a South Africa tour at the time. We went to London and then South Africa. And somehow I packed up all of my stuff before the tour. We did the tour. We got back from Johannesburg that morning, and I had my bags in my office at the Minnesota Orchestra. I went to lunch and said goodbye to a couple of friends, and that evening, I then headed to the airport and flew to Berlin. So that was crazy.
That is
Wow.
awesome. Yeah. You know, you remind me a lot about my move when I moved from Colombia to the United States. It was 10 years ago, and when I was in Colombia, I felt like I needed to move to study. And it was the same. Well, almost the same. I knew that my parents were going to support me and say, hey, can you please lend me the money for the ticket? And my parents is like, okay, when do you need it? I remember this was like in September and I moved in January 5. But I also like, I didn't have anything. I just like moved with two bags, like two bags, one with scores and one with jackets that never, like they didn't work for the cold. They were like the worst, like winter clothes. But it's just an act of bravery to just uproot yourself and jump into the unknown. And I think you're a better artist for it and a better citizen for it. So it's
Well,
really awesome.
and I mean, obviously, listen, I wasn't as lucky as you two to have, partners at the time. So that is a whole nother factor one must make. Like, do you uproot yourself and uproot your relationship, or if you have children, some people may have children, do you uproot those things?
Absolutely, it's
Um,
different.
I, 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 I suppose I've been fortunate and unfortunate to have to make decisions in my career in selfish ways, only having to sustain myself. And I suppose that's a bit helpful when you're a young musician or you're a young conductor. I just know so many scenarios where someone has to take a job somewhere else and their partner has to give up a job and move there, or it makes the decision much tougher or harder. And so those are certainly things to factor in. But like you said, Lena, I think um, there's nothing really convenient about this profession, especially when you're young. There's very little that's convenient. Maybe convenience comes a bit later when you've really established yourself and you're able to take advantage of the perks. But you're going to have to make yourself, I think, very uncomfortable to have a better chance at success and having those scary moments, but knowing, okay, I need to do this, or I need to go to that school, or I need to go to that master class, and I need to do whatever it takes to get there is an important thing. You're gambling a bit. You have to gamble and hope for the
Absolutely.
best.
Yeah, and you have to be so vulnerable because then you just have to be open for everything that throws at you. And it's just an act of resilience. And I think it serves you so well. I have a question for you in that sense. And I thought you were going to say something. What are the things that you wish you knew in advance? Like if there is something that you would say, oh, I wish I knew this, and you can give us this advice to someone who hasn't moved and wants to make the move and wants to be as brave as you.
Hmm. I suppose, I mean, we grow where we start. And that's the most important thing. Wherever you are, you have to try to grow from there. Growing up in a small city of Macon, Georgia, where there was very little classical music. There was lots of music around, but there were very little classical music examples. I didn't have, I wasn't always aware of what I needed to know. And so I had to really work hard to fill in those gaps and fill in those voids. And I know that I don't know, well, I'm better at it now, but I didn't know German and I didn't know these sorts of languages. And either you can say as a conductor, okay, this is not in my education. I didn't learn it, whatnot. I'm just going to be comfortable not knowing it, and this is what I'll do. Then maybe you're limiting yourself. The best thing you can do is get started, get started and begin. And you'll find yourself that in a year or two, yeah, it may be extremely agonizing. And it was extremely agonizing, me thinking, oh my God, I've never learned German and whatnot. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a conversation with people and you're just speaking German. And all of a sudden you surprise yourself, like, oh my God, I don't know German well, but I'm doing German. And that sort of small victory helps you keep going, you know. And for me in my training, and I think this is typical, I don't know about Curtis, but at Northwestern, your training in opera is very, very, very small. And I think doctoral students got to do a little opera, but master students didn't do any opera. And that's the way it is in most universities in America. And so at first I said to myself, well, I know very little about opera. I'm not going to do opera. I'm just going to be a symphonic conductor. Either you can stay there or decide, okay, I'm going to suck it up and start learning opera and make myself uncomfortable. And so, like you said, Lena, you have to be willing to make yourself uncomfortable for that growth to happen.
And you did Pearl Fishers just last year, right? At Houston Grand Opera?
Oh, I did do that.
Yeah, so talk about, you know, diving into opera, not let alone, you were just talking about German, but another language in French.
It was extremely scary because there are going to be opportunities that come to you. I don't know how you feel about this, but there are opportunities that are going to come to you where you're thinking, why are they asking me to do this? Like there are other conductors who are much more qualified to do this or have a much more passion for that. Should I be doing this? Or and that was the case with opera. When I signed on with my management, which we're with the same company, and they asked, what are your interests? I said, you know, I don't think I'll be doing opera.
And you
was surprised that a couple months after that, I'm getting an invitation to do opera. And I'm like, what no, I don't, what are they thinking about? You know, and then all of a sudden I said, okay, someone's obviously asking you to do it. Someone's obviously interested in your voice and what you might bring to the table. So why not step into that space, learn or try to figure out what you don't know and learn. And then maybe it's something you might be interested in doing.
Yeah, that element of seizing the opportunity and looking for the um, opportunities to grow from that, I think is such a incredibly important ingredient in all of that we're experiencing as right now as young conductors, I think. You've mentioned this a few times in many of your answers so far, so I want to just tap back right into it about the support systems, right? So you were talking about how you weren't really sure as to what you should be learning early on in your career, and then talking about your musical family in Minnesota. And I think that support systems for conductors can be quite fluid in that, depending on where you are, and because you're traveling so much, you have to figure out creatively who your support system is and how do you rely on them. So it's more of a question about how have you been able to either build a new support system in Europe, or how have you been able to sustain your existing support systems from the US?
I try to pool my support from, I think, wherever I can. I still watch master classes. I still, watch other conductors work, and I'll go to the Berlin Phil rehearsals, sit there, and when I have time off to watch and go to performances and continue to look for those inspirational things that drive me or inspires my own growth. But yeah, it's in terms of a mentor. Yeah, I think that's a tougher situation. I think I'm in a position where I have to really just try to generate my own support system.
Hey, we all have to do it in our ways, right? And sometimes the support system can be family, or it can be friends in admin that are in orchestras, not necessarily a musician, but somebody that is working for orchestras, someone to kind of just understand what the life is, right? So relying on those people, I've found, especially now that I've left my position, even though I'm still in Philadelphia, has been really important in, making sure that I know, what that support system is like. So yeah, I mean,
I think as a conductor, you have to, and those support systems do change. The friends that you may have studied with or went to conducting master classes with and whatnot, you have to keep checking those and figuring out if those friendships or if those connections are positive towards your growth, or do they become negative? So if there's a conductor who's, you say, oh, I'm conducting here or I'm going there, and they're, oh, why not me, or why is this, or they're kind of negative, or then that's not good. And you have to perhaps figure out if those relationships are helpful towards you. I think finding, especially as young conductors, finding things, continuing to find humbling experiences, because I think when you humble yourself, there's so much, you're more eager to grow. And it is this balance of doubt in yourself and having self-confidence, right? Obviously, we have to lead orchestras and be confident in what we're doing, but also the doubt gives question marks, and with question marks, then you're searching for answers, and I think that's what we must keep doing.
Absolutely. I have a question for you regarding future considerations of the job, and how, for example, orchestras now hiring locally, especially with the challenges that we're living with travel bans and travel difficulty on airplanes and ecological impact. Like, what does it mean for you? Like, how do you find the balance of being like quintessential American conductor and living in Europe? And do you envision And now that you talk about so much about planning, do you envision your first music directorship in any of these continents? Like, have you been making those considerations? Is that something that you've been thinking about?
Yes, I suppose that I don't know what locally means for me yet. Like, I'm an American, but living in Europe, so I suppose my passport gets me here and there, and most of my work is still in America, and I want to try to balance that out a little bit more. So that's why I'm here. I'm sure that's probably the case for you too, Kincho. You're trying to, try to figure out how to find the balance. But also the understanding that a conductor to be able to work across multiple continents is still a huge privilege. There are lots of conductors who are established in America and not able to move over or get over here. And there are conductors who are conducting like a lot here and still haven't conducted, a single orchestra in America or one orchestra there. So that is, I think it is an advantage, but I have not been requested for any localized things here yet. My question, I think my concern, I suppose, would be is this localized hiring, does it also become nationalized hiring? So are German orchestras only going to start hiring German conductors and British orchestras, British and so forth? The cross connection of us as musicians, I think, is still important. So how do we make sure that remains intact? The question about music director, that keeps shifting, I think, for me. At first, when I was able to have the freedom of not being in a contracted job, I was very much enjoying this sort of freedom of working on my own projects and things of that nature. But also I'm coming to the realization, and I'd be curious to hear what you think, Kincho, it's that the fact that we as conductors, we have to conduct and we need orchestras to work with. And by having your own orchestra, especially as a young conductor, I think is important because you can then develop a relationship that goes week by week or month by month versus going to an orchestra you don't know and working with them for a week and maybe trying to get them there or spending a couple days trying to figure out how they play and what they do and and then see, okay, and then you accomplish something and then maybe you're saying, you have to say, okay, bye, thank you, maybe we'll see you in a couple of years or something, versus being with a group and really, I think is a test of you as an artist, as you as a conductor to then see what you can really accomplish over a long period of time. I haven't given much thought on where, if it should be an American orchestra or a European orchestra. I think the most important element is it being the right orchestra, an orchestra that you really feel a connection with, that you feel that you can grow together, an orchestra that fits your artistic vision. And so sometimes I have to be honest, it does make me a little antsy when orchestras are announcing new music directors here and music directors there, and some of them are your colleagues and whatnot, and you think, oh my God, I need to get an orchestra. Like, I need to get an orchestra. And so, but I also think there's no sense of panic yet. I mean, just be patient and hope that the right situation will come along where you're with the right orchestra, because I think the most important thing is being with the right orchestra at the right time versus any orchestra. And I know colleagues of mine um, who are in some pretty attractive um, music director positions in America, music director positions that almost any young conductor might want, and they find themselves uninspired or feel that it was a regret of theirs to have taken that position so soon. And so the freedom that we have to travel and to work in different places is a privilege. I have to remind myself of that.
I couldn't agree more just
Yes.
about the privilege of, you know, being free, especially when we, you know, I think all of us have one experienced the kind of weekly grind of being a staff conductor and really fighting for the flexibility to be able to pursue those guest conducting opportunities if they show, you know, if they should arise. Also, what you mentioned about the really the mentally taxing endeavor of meeting an orchestra week to week as you're traveling and, you know, guest conducting for the first time. And, you know, when you have the privilege of coming back to an orchestra, just how much more comfortable you feel even just at the second visit instead of the first, you know. And so I totally relate to that kind of desire to be with an orchestra that you know and you feel comfortable with. But the most important thing that you did say, it was finding that group. I'm talking about music directorships now, about with which you can grow, right? So you want to grow together, you want to build something together, and I think that's so important for us in our first positions. So yeah, just something that I'm thinking about.
Also, a community that embraces you and that you can make a difference, that your repertoire choices are affecting positively the community, and culturally it's enriched. And we're not just there to satisfy somebody else's artistic taste, because that then becomes it becomes really hard, especially when you're a young conductor and you have these like a lot of expectations of boards and money and all of these to fill things with maybe repertoire that you feel like you already know, that they already know, and it's just about nostalgia, not they need to advance the art form. So I think there is something really important about like really waiting for the right opportunity to make a difference in a community. Otherwise, why would you do it? Then do something else.
And they're really going to want to know if you're going to be there and stay there and put that effort in. I think um, in some of the recent searches I've been in, well, one I believe or so, I had to convey or be honest that I just moved to Berlin and I'm enjoying being here. And being able to say that and be honest about that, even for yourself, shows that, because if you take on one of these positions, you want to give it 100%. And that definitely involves you being there and doing all those things, as you said, Lena, to affecting the community and changing the community and so forth. And so it takes up a lot of your time. But there, again, I'm very much open to the right opportunity coming along, because there is still, I think, so much repertoire that you want to do that is hard to get, you know, off on your schedule as a guest conductor. I mean, I would really like to get through the Sibelius symphonies, or I really like to do this over a long period of time. And to do that, it would be great to have your own orchestra to do that, and to be able to shape that. And also there are those pieces that are music director pieces. You know, you're very lucky to get to go do Mahler 4, Kencho, that, you know, that was
Oh, such a treat. Yeah.
really, because usually that doesn't happen. as a guest conductor at our age. So yeah, those are some of the benefits, of course.
Yeah, and speaking of kind of, you know, being really anticipating the return of concerts and being able to conduct again, what do you have coming up? You know, of course, some things may be canceled at the moment, but what are some things, big projects that you're excited about? And at the same time, I would love for you to talk about your initiative too, the Roderick Cox initiative.
Well, I've actually think I've now moved into the acceptance phase of it just might not happen. You know, at first this was it took me about 2 months to find my way. That's why I salute you too for being able to put together your series on Instagram and whatnot, and do these things so quickly, because I didn't want to hear any music or talk about any music for for a good 2 months. And so now, I'm looking forward to my debut with the Cincinnati Symphony and LA Chamber Orchestra, and my San Francisco Opera debut next season. I am preparing for, I'm preparing for the fall, but I'm anticipating that most of the things will happen in January. And I just feel like that goalpost just keeps moving and moving and shifting. And I'm just hoping that we find January as a possible start. My music initiative, the Roderick Cox Music Initiative, is something that came out of my time with the Minnesota Orchestra. I was very privileged in having a great support system there. I'm sorry, I didn't mention that. I had a great support system in the community. And this is interesting, because usually as staff conductors, we go to these orchestras and we think, you know, we do our kids' concerts and this and that, but we don't think that those sorts of connections are that important. That's the music director's job. But I felt during my time there that, you know, I just didn't want to be sitting on the sidelines. I wanted to, you know, really get to know my community and build connections there. And so this is a music initiative that partners with two of the music institutions, the McPhail Music Center and Walker West Music Academy, which services mostly young students, young musicians from underrepresented communities. And this music initiative that I established gives aid to those young people. Growing up, we didn't have very much money, and I was playing on a school instrument, French horn, all throughout high school. And it was a really, really crappy instrument. So it was a crappy instrument. And I remember wanting to study music in college, but didn't have the money to buy a new French horn. And so the Otis Redding Foundation, named after the famous late singer, the widows, Zelma Redding, helped purchased an instrument for me. And I never met her before, but she only had two stipulations, which was, I think one was just to make sure I'm making good grades in school. And so I felt that now I'm in a position to help other young people who have similar dreams. You're a string player, so just to be able to buy a kid a new bow helps their skill, or help them go to a summer camp at Brevard or at the Curtis Music Camp or something is important. And so I felt it necessary to invest in that.
I love that. We talk a lot about the approaches to being a staff conductor, and I often find myself saying that you can really just kind of float by your assistantship and not make much of a community impact, where actually you have such an opportunity because you're on the ground all the time. You're doing pre-concert lectures, interacting with the audiences, you're talking to the musicians all the time. you're actually living in the city and you're in the city for so much more. So it's amazing that you took that opportunity to make something really wonderful out of that initiative.
I say that, like I said at the beginning of the conversation, I think when you get an assistant conducting position or staff conducting position, you should make as much noise as you can immediately. You should make as much noise to say, I'm here, I'm doing this, because that's important. People always think that, oh, I'm a great musician or I'm a good conductor. Why isn't that resonating? Why am I not having a career? Well, that's because careers are not always about your musicianship. They're about other things, the it factor, or other things that contribute to people wanting to play for you. That has to be number one, right? People have to want to play for you. People have to want to work with you. People have to want to be inspired by you and your work, and you convincing everyone to come along with you. And so if people are saying, okay, who's in Philadelphia now? Who's the new assistant there? Or is someone there? Then that's a problem. And that's not the case with you guys and you, Lena. I've heard a lot about you already. So that's really good. Yeah.
I'm noisy. I'm Latina, so that's like that is my default. I like to make noise.
Well, thank you so much again for joining us and for your insights. I think it's valuable, not just for our audience, but for us to hear your experiences. And it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Roderick.